Greetings, citizens of the world. We are Anonymous. Today in America it has begun, and by it I mean the final crackdown of all dissenting voices against the correct narrative you're being manipulated to know and emotionally feel about by your mainstream media elitists, one of whom, Mickey Brzezinski, who declared Trump's victory a fake presidency. She spoke for all of her fellow media propagandists when she stated that, "Our job is to control exactly what people think." Nearly simultaneously with Ms. Brzezinski declaring what the elite media's true objectives and motivations are, two of America's largest dissenting alternative media sources, Infowars.com and naturalnews.com, came under life-threatening attacks, with Infowars.com being banned from one of the largest advertising platforms in the world for its support of Trump, and naturalnews.com for its telling the truth about GMO foods and vaccine links to autism, being blacklisted by Google and having 140,000 scientific research pages from its index deleted. They have also terminated several anonymous accounts on YouTube, because they didn't like their political views. We believe this is infringing on our First Amendment rights that are in the Constitution. Also, along with two dissenting alternative media sources being effectively destroyed because their main sources of revenue and information are being destroyed, there are hundreds more examples occurring too, and that began in the run-up to the 2016 US presidential election when, in March 2015, one of the most viewed truth-to-power websites, antiwar.com, had all of its Google ads cut off for their "Seriously, you can't make this up" reporting on war. Now, in order for you to fully understand what is really happening with this American crackdown on dissent, you should understand that we as human beings construct competing narratives about events, sometimes even as those events are playing out, and then choose the one that makes the outcome make sense to us, thus making us all subject to manipulation. If you want to believe a narrative that President Trump was elected by the Russians, you've got it. If you want to believe a narrative that President Trump is under siege by deep state leftist forces to destroy him, you've got that too. Everything, in fact, you're subjected to on a daily basis by your mainstream media, is bifurcated, divided into two branches or forks, in order to support the narrative you've come to believe in. And if you want to know how truly powerful this manipulative psychological technique is, just try to convince someone who doesn't have your point of view that you are right and they are wrong. Do you really believe that someone opposed to abortion is going to convince a pro-abortion activist to change their mind? Do you believe that an anti-gun activist is going to convince gun owners to disarm? Do you believe that anti-GMO activists are going to convince the masses of how dangerous these foods are? Do you believe that parents who know the truth about vaccines links to autism are all going to suddenly have their babies and children vaccinated? Do you think that the tens of millions of Americans who voted for Trump are going to suddenly call for Hillary Clinton to be installed as their new leader? No rational person would believe such things, choosing instead to organize and affiliate themselves with those of like mind, but in the process shutting themselves off from their opponents' points of view. And that, dear friends, is exactly the circumstance you now find yourselves in, and to such a strong emotional extent that nearly everyone is forgetting to ask the only question needing to be asked right now: why is this being done? First of all, you must understand that the culture war your world is currently embroiled in is about irreconcilable beliefs about God and man, right and wrong, good and evil, and at its root is a religious war. This culture, religious war, also, has a beginning, and that nominally started in 1991 when an American sociologist named James Hunter published a book titled Culture Wars: The Struggle to Control the Family, Art, Education, Law, and Politics in America, that describes a battle for control of American culture and social institutions fought between conservative religious groups, Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish, and their radical politically far-left progressive counterparts. While Hunter in his culture war treatise did suggest some practical steps for policymakers to acquire new analytical tools to resolve this conflict, what happened, instead, was that it was adopted as a sort of holy guidebook by the new President Bill Clinton, and his radical leftist allies, to once and for all achieve their dream of eradicating all Christian morality from America. And that 18 years later, in 2009, the newly elected President Barack Obama believed the left had achieved when he proclaimed, "We do not consider ourselves to be a Christian nation." Obama had reason to believe that his leftist forces, aided by the equally leftist mainstream media, had achieved their goal of destroying Christian morality in America, and whose victories included everything from homosexual marriage being adopted as the law of the land, Christianity being forced out of nearly all American life under penalty of law, and the outright suppression of all thought contrary to what these leftists believe in. So much so, in fact, did these leftist forces believe that they had not only won this culture war outright, thus allowing them to join with the global community to stamp out all religion forever in order to create their utopian one-world government. In America they declared that their only opposition, the Republican Party, grand old party, was dead, with one leftist journalist even gleefully proclaiming that their GOP is a mummy-wrapped skeleton sitting in its own chilly mausoleum of bilious resentments and creepy sentimentality. While basking in their victory, and believing they were unstoppable, though, these leftist forces in America failed to heed the words of the world's acknowledged most skillful strategist of war, Sun Tzu, most particularly his two foremost sayings: "He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot, will be victorious. And know thyself, know thy enemy. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories." The even greater failing of these American leftists was in their forgetting who their Republican Party adversaries really were, and who, in 6 short years, between 1854 to 1860, came from nothing, captured the US presidency, and then initiated the greatest war in US history, whose deaths eclipsed every other single war the United States has fought in its entire history combined. To how the Republican Party achieved this astounding victory over their pro-slavery Democratic Party opponents was by their first knowing what battles they could win, and which they would lose, thus causing them to not even bother to attempt to achieve a national victory for their anti-slavery cause, but, instead, focusing all of their efforts on a 1,000-battle strategy where they built their support from the bottom up by concentrating on even the smallest town and smallest election possible to elect their candidates. And as the Republican Party had done between 1854 to 1860, so have they accomplished between 2009 and today, with all remaining to occur now being the civil war soon to come that will kill millions. Understanding why this true is, again, simple, and that began immediately after President Obama, in 2009, proclaimed that America was no longer a Christian nation, thus causing the Republican Party to revert to their 1854 to 1860 guidebook, so to speak, and forego seriously challenging the Democratic Party on the national stage, choosing, instead, to concentrate all of their efforts on even their most minor election. This Republican Party, Sun Tzu's 1,000-battle strategy, as it had in the late 1850s, worked to perfection for the Republican Party, who virtually gutted the entire Democratic Party. By 2016, as these leftists' losses in the lower, mostly unseen, state elections now number over 1,000, not to mention the Democrats losing both houses of Congress and the presidency too. But as their Republican Party forebearers in 1860 knew all too well once they assumed power, the Republicans in America today know too that this war isn't ended, it's just beginning. America has been so corrupted by the Democratic Party, these Republicans believe, that every single institution in the United States, government/schools/press/courts/etc., now has to be completely destroyed and rebuilt. And while their Democratic Party leftists opponents are still railing against ghosts that do not exist, Russian hacking, Trump is a dictator / etc. In order to somehow comfort themselves against their devastating losses, they, as always, are failing to see what their true demise is really going to be. And as encapsulated in a small headline this past week, they still failed to see the full importance of, and that says, how Tennessee could be about to start a constitutional crisis. To understand how critically important this headline is, you need to understand that while these Democratic Party leftists have spent the last 8 years basking in the glory of their President Obama, and believing that all of their secular victories were but stepping stones to finally eradicate from America all morality and Christianity forever, the Republican Party was silently building the largest grassroots organization that country has ever known, called Citizens for Self-Governance, and whose forces number more than 51,000 volunteers and 2,050 state house district captains, with their goal of having one in each of the United States' 5,000 districts by 2018. And to fully understand what this means, you should know that, according to Article V of the US Constitution, the states can convene a constitutional convention without the federal government's go-ahead if 2/3, 34, of them pass a resolution in favor of it, and that 28 states had already voted to do when Trump won the presidency, and with the Republican Party now controlling 32 states. Only 2 are left to conquer before the Republicans are able to destroy everything that stands now, and rebuild it in their own image. It is up to the American people, of course, to ultimately decide what their new constitution will be. But with barely any of them knowing the full, and horrible, consequences of what is now occurring, this entire nation is left ignorant as to what is really occurring all around them, and the powerful forces who are directing it. Our mission has always been to make sure this doesn't happen to you, and for over a decade we've laid out the trail of what has happened, what is happening now, and what could possibly happen in the future. However, we've only been able to accomplish this because of you. Unlike nearly all of other alternative news sources currently being targeted for destruction, our survival has always been dependent upon your kindness, generosity and, most of all, your desire to know true things. There are many, many more lessons you need to learn to be prepared for what's coming, and our sincerest hope is that you're not yet mentally captured by those seeking to keep you as ignorant and ill-informed as possible, and in your being able to see the truth when it's shown to you, will from your hearts and minds support those of us seeking to help you, and today would be much better than tomorrow. We are Anonymous.